Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR podcast brought to you by racefortheprize.com. It's the Saturday show. Let's get some Xfinity picks in and get our Memorial Day weekend rocking and rolling. As you can see on the screen in the green, that's your core. And there probably isn't much of a reason to deviate from that unless you're just trying to differentiate and get away from the crowd. But as far as what are the picks that look the best and are going to be popular? It's J.J. Yaley, Ty Gibbs, Kyle Busch, and Josh Williams. If you'd like to have access to the full entire spreadsheet for this race or the month of June coming up and July coming up, $30 for June, and I'll throw in the Charlotte races. You get all the practice data that you want to look at. Throw it on the screen real quick. There you go, all the lap by lap if you really want to dive into it. Or June and July, $55. And again, I'll throw in Charlotte. Yaley, Gibbs, Busch, Williams. You can see that's where most of the crowd's going to go, and I don't mind. Then you got 2 spots left, and I don't really need to explain. Gibbs looks awesome. Busch looks really good as well. We want 2 hogs/dominators. If you watched or listened to earlier podcasts this week, our value is easily coming from Williams and J.J. Yaley because you've got Yaley starting 38th. Who has a really good shot at going to 20th. Obviously, anyone can wreck, but his car looked fine. Experienced driver, has been in plenty of optimal lineups, not just at Charlotte, at plenty of tracks in the Xfinity Series over the years. Josh Williams, starting in the back, in the colored car, we would expect him to slowly work his way forward to 20th. And even if he doesn't get to 20th, he's going to be fine as far as the better value picks. I mean, we're getting a quality car, a decent driver at an affordable price starting in the back. You don't really need to overthink it. From there, you're rounding out your lineup. I like Sammy Smith a lot. I think he's undervalued at $8,000. Maybe his practice times weren't as good as you need to see, but throughout the race, I expect him to get better. Obviously, I'm a little bit more bullish on Sammy Smith than some other drivers, but you're getting a junior motorsports car 8,000, starting 16th. There's not a lot of other top tier cars that are that affordable and that can score fantasy points. There's a big fall off from Gibbs and Busch. We just don't see the other elite drivers in this race, specifically with Gibbs and Busch, being able to score a lot of fantasy points. We can talk about some pivots like Allgaier and Chandler Smith in a second, but from our top tier at our expensive range, it's just hard to see those drivers with the way qualifying set up to score a lot of fantasy points. Just the way it is. So Sammy Smith slots in there really well. And then also Shane Van Gisbergen also works out pretty well. It's a little bit riskier. This is a tough race, but he is starting 29th at $6,500 in a colored car. It may not be pretty, but you give him enough laps, he should be able to work his way to around 22nd. That's a pretty conservative approach. It's not the biggest score in terms of value, but again, the way qualifying is set up, there's really not a lot of options in the middle to whatever tier. Then from there, we might as well just talk about the pivots. If you want to get away from the crowd a little bit and go to Justin Allgaier away from a Gibbs or a Busch, that's fine. Allgaier is clearly the best driver in this series full time. His car has been incredibly fast. He's finally winning races. And there's no guarantee that Gibbs and Busch are going to win. So if you want to pivot to Allgaier, that is fine. So get you a little place differential as well. So even if he doesn't lead as many laps as Gibbs or Busch, he could get there with the extra place differential and having a good run towards the back end. Then you also have the Chandler Smith option, which I think is a little bit more risky. But as he said, he is pretty excited about this race. He hasn't been the most dominant driver in the last couple months, with Allgaier's emergence as pretty much the cream of the crop or the top. But Smith talking in his post-race interview about how it's going to be hot and slick and reminds him a lot more of a short track. And, there's no guarantee in this series that one guy is going to lead all laps. Now, Smith has shown the propensity to get out front and then lose the lead, and I could very easily on any sort of long run, and not even being that long of a long run, Gibbs, Busch, or Allgaier overcoming him. But if Smith can run up front in that top 5, scrape off some fast laps, and finish in the top 5, he could work. And there are lineups that you could build if you're going punt-wise with Gibbs, with Busch, and also getting Smith if you go down to the punt range of Patrick Emmerling, which you don't really love, but you are getting him 35th. And His car has not been terrible this season. It's been around a top 30 car, but you might need to back that up a little or bump it down because the field is a little bit more stacked. But as always, if it is a hot, slick racetrack, we throw in some attrition. It's not beyond the realm of possibilities that he can finish 29th and you're getting maximum savings so you can make that work. Continuing our theme of, all right, well, maybe I do want to punt and try to get to, I don't think you can really get Allgaier in there with these guys, but you could maybe go with another top tier driver that runs in the top 5. I think Elliott's going to be off the board, but get into the top 5, run some fast laps, maybe even lead for a cycle or two. So among those is Cram, and I know that's an ugly play, but he is 4,700. He's starting towards the back, and it's just simply a pure attrition play, and we have seen him throughout this season finish better than where he runs. So as long as he doesn't wreck, he is an option. Along with Emmerling, I think I would rather take the extra savings with Emmerling and the extra starting position and being a better driver in a slightly better car. Dean Thompson is always a possibility, 26, so he's not starting too deep, or deep enough that we would love to get place differential, but it is a Sam Hunt racing car. Dean Thompson is logging a ton of laps this weekend. He is a average, maybe above average driver. That's probably a bit of an exaggeration, but again, the situation with Dean Thompson always is, and we've seen this in the truck series, he's a top 10 driver in a Tricon truck in the truck series if he doesn't wreck. Wrecks probably too often. Now, obviously, that's inflated because he's in pretty good equipment, but he's in good enough. He's in top 25 equipment this weekend. And so to finish 24th is not really that much of a stretch. He can work. That's 20 fantasy points. That's better than Cram, but obviously he doesn't give you the maximum savings. Leland Honeyman in an average car, probably not going to get any ownership whatsoever. Probably don't need to go there, but I will leave him because he's just been okay this season. He's starting just far enough back that I can work, and he gives me just enough savings. The equipment's just good enough. We factor in maybe a little bit of attrition. He's on the board, not a favorite play by any means. And then the last one that I would consider is Kyle Sieg, because he's not quite giving us the savings that we want. He is making up for that with his starting position of 34th. It is a Sieg car, so it's better than Honeyman's, not better than Thompson's, but he does have a little bit more experience in the Xfinity series, obviously, right? Thompson doesn't have anything, but Thompson's running a lot of laps. He's familiar with Charlotte. Sieg's a better driver than Cram, better equipment than Cram, but again, you're paying $1,300 more. He is going to be someone that you could kind of sprinkle around. So there's our sprinkle around punts, SVG, and Sammy Smith, probably going to be the first place that you would go outside of this core. Allgaier, Smith would look like some of my pivots. Probably should mention Parker Kligerman, but first we talk about Ryan Sieg at 7,200. Not bad. Starting 21st. 14th might be a little aggressive in this field, but he did show plenty of speed in practice, and he does have the premier Sieg equipment. So for him to finish in the top 15 is basically where he's been running this season. Again, we have a stacked field, so maybe he's sliding back a little bit, but he's throwing enough attrition. He is very capable of a top 15. It's just, is the 7,200 a little bit too much to build around? You can fit in SVG with Sammy Smith, but I would say that I would consider him in some of these builds. And then I guess if Sieg's in contention, then Kligerman. And maybe I'm overreacting a little bit towards practice because, if Sieg is considered a top 15 driver, then Parker Kligerman in the big machine vehicle is also a top 15. And maybe he gets lower owned because practice didn't go as hot for him, but it was just one practice session. So probably don't want to overreact there. And you would probably put him in the same consideration. And then maybe, I'm not even going to mention Brandon Jones. Let's not do that. That does it. That's pretty much it. That's the build. That's the way to go. If you would like to get access to the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet, again, $30 for the month of June and also in Charlotte. Or you can get June and July, one payment, no subscriptions, no verification of your social security number. I don't have to put in your credit card or anything. Just Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. You can see that on the screen next to me. Like, subscribe, share. Thank you, everybody that's been here. Blessed to have you guys here. Hope you have a great Memorial Day weekend. Love you guys. Trip Delight Fantastic.